What's up, guys? Welcome to another Indie Talk, where we talk about things that are happening in the news when it comes to indie. Now, I'm looking at a Polygon article, so take that as you will, take their word as, with a grain of salt and stuff like that, but look at the title and see what it says. Indie Game Awards rescind Clair Obscur Game of the Year wins over use of generative AI. Now, the most important thing here is probably the top, where they were talking about, the team developed Sandfall Interactive, publisher Kepler Interactive couldn't celebrate for too long. On Saturday, Indie Game Awards retracted Clair Obscur's honor due to inclusion of generative AI assets at launch that were quickly patched out. Now, I'm not really too sure. They have the game facts and stuff, so this is what the Game Awards are saying. But representatives of Sandfall Interactive agreed that no Gen AI was used in the development of Clair Obscur Expedition 33. So that's what they said. When the game was submitted for awards consideration in light of Sandfall Interactive confirming the use of Gen AI art in production on the day of the Indie Game Awards 2025 premiere, this does disqualify Clair Obscur Expedition 33 from its nomination. Now, where did they get that fact from? Well, if you come down here, right, apparently, so Sandfall Interactive had previously admitted to use of Gen AI in developing Clair Obscur in June. The Spanish outlet El Piez, I'm butchering that, published a story including an interview conducted around Clair Obscur's launch, in which Maurice, and that's what I'm going to say, Maurice, I'm butchering their name, Francis or something, admitted that Sandfall used a minimal amount of generative AI in some form during the game's development. Okay, we need to talk about this real quick, because here's something. Now, if Sandfall did lie when they said, hey, there's no generative AI in the development of Clair Obscur, then they lied, right? And I don't know, maybe, hey, that's, calls for alarm. Yeah, take the Game Awards away from them, or take the Game of the Year award away from them and all that other stuff, right? Because they lied about that. However, there are now stories on Twitter which says another story. So I'm looking up on Twitter, and my page and algorithm for Twitter luckily is only about indie games and indie news and anything of that nature, because that's all I'm looking for on Twitter. But I was able to put in Sandfall Interactive, and already people are debunking this, because I believe there was like some sort of mistranslation via Google when they were looking at the articles that was from the same ones of LPS. So here it is. Sandfall Interactive confirmed via LPS. A limited number of pre-existing UE Unreal Engine Marketplace 3D assets were used. None were created with generative AI. No Gen AI assets are in the final game. AI tools were briefly tested in 2022 for placeholder textures. Those placeholder textures were removed within 5 days after launch and replaced with intended textures. Anyway, I know some people are feeling very embarrassed right now, probably because they probably put out the news way too soon, but those placeholders were removed. AI tools were briefly tested. So maybe this was a mistake, an accident where they left it in there, but here we go. Here's another one. Look, I'm critical of how AI is used too, but this shit is cringe and performative as fuck. Sandfall did not use generative AI for the final product. And as it says here, following the publication of this article, Sandfall Interactive wished to provide the following clarification. The studio states that it was in contact with LPS on April 25th, 3 months prior to this publication. During these exchanges, Sandfall Interactive indicated that it had used a limited number of pre-existing assets, notable 3D assets sourced from the Unreal Engine market. None of these assets were created using artificial intelligence. Sandfall Interactive further clarifies that there are no generative AI created assets in the game. When the first AI tool became available in 2022, some members of the team briefly experimented with them to generate temporary placeholder textures. Upon release, an instance of the placeholder textures were removed within 5 days. So they caught that in 5 days, to be replaced with the correct textures that had always been intended for release, but were missed during the quality assurance process. And that can happen with a team as small as this. Well, it's bigger than this, but you get what I'm saying here. There are going to be people who are going to go after Sandfall. There are going to be people who are going to say, hey, they use generative AI. Hey, they used it as a placeholder. Hey, they use it in development. But it looks to me, with this clarification here and probably some mistranslation from Google Translate, I don't know what the heck happened there, but from what it seems like, what they're saying is that there is no generative AI or artificial intelligence development that went into the game. They were just experimenting with it in 2022. You can miss certain placeholders and assets within games, and that's what quality assurance is for. If they missed it, oh shit. But that doesn't mean that they were using it part of their development in any other way other than a tool. If they were using it, they were experimenting, so it was a tool. They did not develop the game with such AI, at least from what I can see. Which leads me to ask, why did the Indie Game Awards, hopefully they have the full context of this, but why did they still take away the Game of the Year from Expedition 33? I do not understand. Apparently, once you use generative AI in any form, it's like the boogeyman, you can't use it, which is setting a bad precedence for indie games everywhere. They're basically saying if you use Gen AI, well, you suck. You're a piece of shit. You're crap. You're not getting any award because you're using Gen AI. And that's what they're trying to set up. Meanwhile, what people on the indie side, which I know they're doing, they're using Gen AI as a tool, just a tool. They're not making an entire game out of Gen AI. And if they are, guess what? People will see that and not deny it or anything like that. They're just going to sit there and be like, this is actual trash. This is garbage. I'm not playing this. I mean, if it's fun, it's fun. But using generative AI to replace artists, voice actors, and all that other stuff, I get the worry. I understand. I'm with you on that. When people are using Gen AI like idiots, like in the AAA industry. But for indie developers, nah, they're using it more or less like a tool, like it should be used as a tool. But, you know, you can't use it. You can't use it because the Indie Game Awards says you can't use it. And let's talk about the Indie Game Awards real quick. So I would have gone to their page on their website, but the nominees are not there anymore. The place for nominees has been changed to this unknown link that doesn't send me to this or anything like that. This is an archive site, so I'm using them. Thank you for being able to keep these archived so that we can see this later. But these are the nominees for Game of the Year, Debut, Bite Size, Solo Developer, Gameplay Design, Achievement in Accessibility. All that's perfectly fine, but wait, let's go down one more. Ann's Indie Game Award. I have no idea. Actually, let's go down one more time. Latin American Indie Game Award. Now you're understanding what is going on here. Let's go down one more time. African Indie Game Award. And let me tell you, this very card right here, this page, set up a whole bunch of controversy where the Indie Game Awards had to literally block stuff, shut down comments, they had to stop traffic, they wanted to gain control because a lot of people were shitting on them for this. Like, what is this large real estate here straight up in the middle called Finding Father for African Indie Game Award? And you might be asking, how does this affect me? Well, hi, I'm Syncweaver, and I'm black. I'm not really personally affected by this, because this is just titles to video games, but then you have Finding Father next to Get the Milk. Finding Father next to Get the Milk, which is over Ikelia, which is across from Stick It to the Stick Man. Now, I don't know if they chose these games because of the title, or if they're actually fun games, but I feel some type of way when I come down here and it says African Indie Game Award, and the first thing that I just plainly notice is Finding Father, which that's a stereotype of anything for black people in the community. I'm just gonna say that right now. That is a very horrible stereotype, and yet it's here. These are the type of people that pander way too much. They are of that mind think. They sit here and talk about representation without really thinking about the game itself. I don't know if these are the people who are qualified, honestly, if they're coming out and having all these awards, but if they're qualified to judge games, if they're looking at representation and whether or not the game is made by Latin Americans, Africans, or Southeast Asians. These are all game developers who are making fun games, and they should be judged on how their games are in terms of fun, not what they are and where they come from. Because then the precedence is, oh, all I have to be is black and they're going to set me up. They're going to represent me because I'm black, no matter the quality of the game. And I don't know, these games could all be great, but this is not setting a good precedence. They weren't setting a good precedence when they were sitting there saying, like at Clair, Obscur, Expedition 33, we're using Gen AI, where they have already stated through an article that they weren't, but I don't know where they're getting their story from. So it's more or less who's telling the truth kind of thing, right? But at the end of the day, you know, it doesn't really matter. We all know that Expedition 33 is a good game. I haven't played it yet. I do stream on weekends. Hey, maybe you'll catch me play it on then, so come by when I'm streaming and all that stuff. And if you haven't subscribed, by the way, please subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. But it shouldn't really matter, right, that they had, you know, generated AI, any assets or anything that they used to make the game, because it helped them save time in making the game. They used it as a tool, I'm sure, if they were using it in any way. They were experimenting with it, which they used as a tool. That's using it as a tool. They were experimenting and having placeholders in there for which they are placeholders, and they had the assets already in there, which they switched out in 5 days, meaning they had it already on hand and it was planned to be in there in the first place, shouldn't really qualify for them to get their awards taken away, knowing full well that that's what happened, right? And they really did say it in that article, which was back in the day. I believe that article was back in the day, but they did clarify. They clarified that there is no Gen AI in the game, and if there was placeholders, which they already had the assets for. That was a quality assurance mistake, but you know, they're not perfect, right? But it's still a good freaking game. It's still a game worth talking about. And they're sitting here talking about, we're going to have to take that away because you use Gen AI, when they blatantly said, no, we didn't. we didn't. We used it as an experiment and we had placeholders. That's about it. These people are so afraid of Gen AI. It's like the freaking boogeyman to these people, that they will find any kind of way to set the precedence. That's they will say, hey, if you're an indie game and you're using generative AI, shame on you. Shame on you. Don't use that tool. It's of the devil. It's taking people's jobs. When you should really be saying, oh, I can use it as a tool to help me finish these games or help build my game easier, faster, and possibly better to understand. And they just fear it. Like, you have to understand, guys, you have to understand. I know I'm using that word a lot. Generative AI is a tool. It is just a tool. If you're going to turn it into some gigantic boogeyman, that's up there higher in the chain with businessmen who don't understand gaming whatsoever, thinking that they can use generative AI to replace a human worker. This is not the case, and I doubt indie games are going to sit there to make an entire game or most of the game out of AI. I just don't think that's happening, especially with Clair, Obscur, Expedition 33. Listen, I'm just going to say Expedition 33, especially Expedition 33, who at the end of the day said that there were none, and if there was one, I guess there were a few, but they took it out because they already had the assets that was supposed to be there. So I don't know. Honestly, I don't think the Indie Game Awards is really doing right here. I don't think they're representing indie games in the best of fashion, and they weren't really representing indie games in the best of fashion with those nominee cards. I'm just saying, I felt some type of way on it, but I don't know. This is really kind of like a nothing burger news. I just wanted to let people know what was going on with this and how some people can just be absolutely ridiculous, and what groups we're dealing with in terms of the Indie Game Awards. Really. Listen, The game looks great. Clair Obscur Expedition 33 looks like a fine game. I want to play it. I have the game. I haven't played it yet. I'm going to play it nonetheless. Even if it had generative AI, it looks like a fun game, and they really shouldn't be too afraid of it. It's a tool. Just use it as a tool. And kind of, the Indie Game Awards, I guess this was kind of expected, but Jesus. Alright guys, I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching, and like I said before, if you have not subscribed, please subscribe if you want to see more videos like this, and catch me on the weekends where I do a bit of streaming. Have a good day. Bye bye.